Good day, everyone. Bonjour, the jury members, my research supervisor, and everyone else present in the room. So as mentioned, I am presenting my defense of my thesis on the Zero Emission Vehicle Challenge in Australia. It is a study of forces and barriers in adoption of ZEVs, that is zero emission vehicles in Victoria, Australia. This slide just covers what is included in the whole presentation. Once we establish that why we're doing this research, then we'll move on to our secondary and primary findings, and then we put those findings through theoretical lens and construct the recommendations that we believe are the most needed and would be most effective in accelerating the adoption of ZEVs in Victoria. The state of Victoria has made a legislative commitment to achieve a net zero emission economy by 2050. And as a part of that commitment, the state has targeted to achieve 50% of all new cars to be ZEVs by 2030. Essentially, this research constructs hypotheses of the recommended public policy that would most effectively influence the uptake of ZEVs so that the state can meet its target. In this slide, I also have just a brief introduction of different technologies at the moment present in the automobile sector. Essentially, the hydrogen fuel cell and the battery electric vehicles are the two main technologies that are completely emission-free. However, we focus on electric vehicles because hydrogen models are so limited and infrastructure does not exist in the country at the moment. So talking about the background of the problem, the transport sector is the second largest contributor to carbon emissions in the state. Road transport alone accounts for 90% of the total transport sector emissions. The state and the country of Australia have made an international legislative commitments to cut its emission. Australia is well behind than rest of the 36 OECD countries. And the forecast of 50% of new cars to be ZEVs is perceived as over-ambitious by the industry as well as the consumers. Just last week, I found that Melbourne has become the biggest city in terms of population of Australia, and Victoria drivers drive more miles or kilometers than any other states in Australia, despite we are the smallest state on the mainland Australia. There's a graph on the screen. There's a quick comparison of where we are at the moment. And so we want to be 50% by 2030. At the moment, just sitting below 10%. So since we have established that Australia is well behind in the race of ZEV adoption, government intervention is needed to nudge the decisions of consumers to purchase a ZEV as their next car, as well as the manufacturers and retailers to bring more products and strategies to the market. Research has found that the government policy can influence the decision-making of the consumer. Recently, the government forced supermarkets to charge 50 cents for plastic bags, and due to that, 95% reduction in one-time use plastic bag uses is observed. So therefore, positive sales trends are also observed in the jurisdictions around the globe in our study, which has a progressive EV policies. This will be discussed in the slides to follow. The topic also is my personal interest, as I have experience of nearly 16 years in the industry, and that helped me build the network within the industry personals. So that's the key research question for the thesis. What are the barriers and incentives for zero emission vehicles, and how can government policies influence zero emission vehicle adoption? So it's a mixture of mainly the public policies influence and what also can be done on the retail and the manufacturer and the consumer levels. As discussed, the state is anticipated to miss its target of 50% of new cars to be ZEVs. Automotive industry, to be precisely forecast, 35% market share by 2030 instead of 50, so well below than the target. Also, we found that the secondary data is abundant on the topic. However, primary data in the context of Australian consumer in particular, because Australia has its own geographical challenges too, that wasn't widely available. Hence, a empirical study was required to create the right formula to help accelerate the adoption. Additionally, the retailers and manufacturers need to observe their corporate social responsibility to bring more ZDV options to the country, and then also create sales strategies and awareness campaigns to help reduce the emissions, and consequently the bad effects that we pump in the environment by the conventional gasoline vehicles. Therefore, the research contributes to managerial decision making and strategic implementation at both the government levels and the business levels by analyzing the enablers and the barriers. Additionally, the technician training, infrastructure change that is part of the change management is also being discussed in coming slides. When it comes to the methodology, we chose constructivism as our epistemological posture because it allows me to participate in the study by bringing my personal values and understanding of the industry, as well as it's a subjective and holistic reality that resonates with the dynamics of the automobile industry, because it's continuously shifting and changing, therefore, when it comes to looking at the organization, that is the retailers and the organizations, with the metaphorical lens, I used influx organization as an influx and transformation. Again, this is due to the continuous transition of technology, political will, and also the resources available to the government and the country. Secondary research includes academic publications, industry magazines, publications from the industry organizations such as Electric Vehicle Council, government data and news articles, and primary data is collected from 40 respondents. This is essentially the research design. It's actually 3 different sections. Literature review, which is my secondary research. We curated the policies from the data available all around the globe, what's being done, what was the result of it, and then the primary data analysis from surveys, interviews, and the discussions, and then put it through the theoretical models of TAM and UTAUT, so that we can construct the key recommendations that we think out of these 3 sections that we think are the key enablers that the government can assist. Okay, now we move into the findings. Apart from the Paris Agreement between 190 whatever countries, between the all the OECD countries as well, Australia has numerous other agreements too, that the commitments that the country has made with Japan, with Indonesia, Vietnam, Germany, and Singapore, that's been defined in the thesis. However, data confirms that we are well behind. Like out of OECD alone, 32 countries are ahead of Australia with the adoption rate. Even New Zealand, which is a population less than Victoria, is way ahead than Australia, all of the country. And the graph on the slide shows the comparison of where we stand compared to some of the other developed countries. Now, this is the comparison between the states of Australia, within Australia. So not only Australia is well behind the rest of the developed world, Victoria as a state is also worse off when compared to the rest of the states. A consumer who would buy an electric vehicle is worse off by $1,612 compared to other states in the country. This is due to the EV road tax that's being calculated in this figure. Now, these are some of the policies that we found during our research, secondary research. What are the different jurisdictions doing and implementing all around the world? And we found some of them, waiving the stamp duty, the taxes, free registration, interest-free loans in ACT. If you look at the previous slide, ACT also is well ahead than Victoria. So obviously ACT has some progressive EV policies, and USA, they get actually California state in particular, which is quite progressive, and they offer 7,500 tax credits to the consumer for purchasing an EV, and then additional tax credit by the federal government, and then more subsidies available for the resale of the vehicle. Additional policies identified rebates on the solar panels for eco or green way of charging the vehicles, funds available to the state for expanding the network, and so on, without going into each of them. I'll skip to the next slide, because in the coming slide we do have a comparison and the consequences of some of the policies. Here we are. So this policy, this is very interesting. In this table we constructed, we found different policies implemented all around the world, and what was the outcome of those policies. For example, I think it's better to look at these two tables other way around. The two columns. So in US, California has the largest charging network. Like nearly 1/3 of all chargers in the whole country are located in California. So what happened when they have this vast charging network? The result was that the California has the highest market share of EVs compared to any other state in US. So there's a correlation. If you have a good charging infrastructure, you sell more EVs. Then the rebates and the subsidies available, again, a positive trend in the sales observed, and so on for Norway, which has the highest market share in the whole world, and it's very interesting. They don't even have the sun that we have in Australia in abundance. However, they offer reduced tax, VAT, which we call GST in Australia, reduced road toll, free public parking, use of bus lane, and then obviously the highest number of charging stations per capita compared to the rest of the Europe. Similarly, the share of electric vehicles in EU was tripled when the European emission standard was introduced. Now, this is the key recommendation that we also made, and all of the industry, like even the Electric Vehicle Council, they're all advocating for the emission standards in Australia. We'll come to that anyway. Electric Vehicle Council has ranked New South Wales as the most progressive in EV adoption, and what was the reason? Because charging infrastructure expansion with grants to the businesses. So they do this public-private partnership where they engage the private businesses, the commercial properties, to install public chargers on their places. So that has worked really well. And then the last one is purchase subsidies and purchase restrictions, where like you just simply cannot buy a diesel car or a gasoline car. So therefore you are mandated to buy an EV, and there's China, where 50% of all the EVs on roads of all over the world are in China already. So all the policies that being identified through our secondary data, I have grouped them in 3 columns. Incentives, we give upfront or throughout the usage of the vehicle, and then restricting someone to make a decision certain, or nudging them to make a decision in a particular direction, and then the additional policies which are not incentive, not restrictive, but are quite critical. So road tax that we had in Victoria, and then the subsidies and tax exemptions, like that's must. And then restrictive policies, city road use tax, pollution tax, additional taxes for like the people with internal combustion engines, they need to pay more for the vehicle in regards to taxes, and the mandated emission standards that we just discussed earlier. And the additional policies are these public-private partnerships, as they have in New South Wales, and fleet vehicles. They should adopt the EVs, which a lot of fleets companies are. Right to charge in apartment building. This is the critical one, because during our primary research, I found many of the people who live in inner Melbourne, inner city suburbs, they hesitate to buy EV just because they're living in apartments, and the charging infrastructure is not available in the parking lots or outside on the street where they park. And then the technician training program, there's a critical shortage of technicians, and we'll come to that on our key recommendations too. Primary findings, again, with the surveys, we invited the participants to rate the barriers and enablers on the scale of 1 to 10 on the basis of their importance or significance. Participants also left their comments with the responses. Subsidies to reduce the upfront cost, convenience to charge the car at home, like not have to go to a gas station to charge or fill my car. Special privileges such as entry to the cities and use the bus lane, those were found as the key enablers. And in contrast, the battery range, the charging infrastructure, the resale value, the variety of models available, that was the big one. Like here in big country of Australia, people want the cars that can travel long distances. People can tow their caravans or trailers. So obviously the different models to fulfill those needs are not there yet. So during our survey, we found that the education, the confidence in the technology and the knowledge is the key concern. These are from the comments some of people made, and followed by the charging infrastructure, especially particularly as discussed, living in the inner city. I'll move on quickly because the time is blocking. This is a nutshell, a figure that concludes our survey results. So again, as discussed in the last slide, pretty much same results. Interviews also resonates with what we found in the survey, but they had more in-depth responses in, obviously, because longer interviews, and then I was pretty involved with the process. So again, range anxiety is very interesting because the people who own the car and versus people who don't own the car. So those who own the car, they have no anxiety actually, because they experience it can work. And the people who don't own the car, they have this mindset that the car will need charging every 100 k's or something. This is now putting the data, primary and secondary data, through the theory models of TAM and UTAUT, and analyzing through the two theory models. This is found that the awareness and experience is the key factor. As I was just talking, those who own EVs certainly endorse it. They become the ambassador of the technology. They experience the ease of use, the usefulness of the technology. It's quiet, it's affordable, it's modern, and there's no such thing as range anxiety when you use it day to day. And therefore, studying TAM and UTAUT, usefulness of technology and the social influence from those who own via awareness programs are the most effective way to influence those who currently haven't made the decision to adopt the technology. Now, After researching all of that, these are the key recommendations that we are making to the governments, which we believe can be the key enablers and push the trend to achieve that target is incentives, subsidies, financial incentives to reduce the upfront cost, privileged use of infrastructure, charging infrastructure, and then the new vehicle efficiency standards, non-negotiable, cease of ICE vehicle eventually, and then the recommendations for scholarships and public-private partnerships. The road use tax was already scrapped. That was a key recommendation. But because the industry is so fast moving, by the time of I'm making this presentation, it's already being scrapped because one of the consumer challenged it in the court. I made this graph by the metrics. We believe that what can be done now and will gain high results, and what can be done in next 1 to 5 years. These are the same recommendations that we have made in the previous slide, but just put that in the metrics.
Please
and
conclude.
Yes, so this is my last slide. So there are limitations because industry is very fast moving, political situation changes, recent developments. For example, Apple has discontinued their program to develop the car. US has cut down the targets. Resale car value. It is found that the electric vehicle depreciates 10 times more than the normal vehicle. So those are the recent developments. So it's always changing. And then the alternative technologies can be studied, such as maybe hydrogen is a better choice. Who knows? We don't know yet. But with hydrogen, we don't need that vast charging infrastructure. And then there can also be more studies can be done on the link between the gender, the income, the location of sorry, and the adoption rate of studying more of the theory models, UT, AUT, and TAM. And I conclude. I'm sorry I took a little bit longer. Thank you so much.